Welcome to Liminal Light, a show that explores the languages of myth and star, earth, sky, tongue, and spirit through weekly astrological forecasts. I'm your host, Chris. Enjoy. The beginning of this week finds Mars in Sagittarius' second phase, separating from a square to Neptune, where aggressive determination to keep will and effort, mind, body, and resources exerted toward a goal or defend a philosophic position is put into attention with the dissolving of boundaries, fantasy, and excess of imagination. Imaginary factors flood into our philosophies, which we so vehemently defend and drive towards. In one respect, I imagine Don Quixote swashbuckling into action against hallucinatory phantoms and apophenic villainy, or perhaps classical cult leader maneuvers that send night-clad ranks creepy-crawling mansions. These are the far reaches of idealizing philosophy excessively, believing your ideology dogmatically, assuming your trip is divine or from God. Another side might be fighting for any philosophy whatsoever, since they are all the same anyway, ultimately, as in joining the stronger seeming camp just to savor victory. On a positive note, floods of imagination and psychic intuition in philosophical or ideological battles is inspiring. It makes for great stories, the stuff subcultural upsurgence and unrelenting resistance is made of. Although extremist subterfuge and evangelist mania drink from the same cup. I'll note that Mars does have dignity by face here, so he's not totally screwed, but we should all practice the suspension of belief we learned from chaos magic techniques for a few days so we don't find ourselves pawns or puppets or worse off. Reasoning is made the last thing on the list as Mercury has passed into Pisces' psychic and poetic logic and is restricted to right-brained thinking. Concrete and mundane organization seems suddenly ridiculous and hopelessly confusing. That's okay. If we are suspending beliefs, we might as well axe belief in rationality right off the bat. Why not take a cue from the Gnostics and temporarily assume anyone could be working for the hypercosmic demiurge, even ourselves? A good thing to inquire inwardly every once in a while, as long as you remain functional, fall into the flow, and banish paranoia. Maybe the sun's ingress into Pisces can shed some light on our situation as our wills, identification, identities, volition, vision, spirit, and intention gazes at the celestial, cosmic, spiritual, imaginative, and mysterious, and begins to identify with a porous, amorphous, and much less concrete world. In religion, this is seeking the spiritual path. In art, free-flowing, unhindered vision. In psychology, it is often pure escapism, or worse, complete delusion and hallucination. As the sun has no dignity here, it tends to get lost even though it has a very artistic and compassionate outlook. It has trouble expressing itself as there are few boundaries between the self and everything else. All is one in Pisces, so the solar individual and ego tend to dissolve. We look to Saturn for help, who is luckily trine by sign in Capricorn, literally holding it down. We may be able to sojourn through the looking glass while remaining anchored to our hourglass. This could be very productive, a moment when constructing a pyramid to the heavens is actually possible, or at least the laying of the plans. Will your poetry anthology into existence, or even stacks of them, then manifest monumental labyrinths with these books as bricks. Venus proceeds into Pisces' second phase, which often rolls out considerable artistic inspiration and skill as she is quite potent while gaining an exaltation as she advances. Of course, as any liberally dignified planet does, she encounters the problem of Venusing out too hard, being so fully into seeking pleasure and beauty and harmony that she loses sight of reality and can become very disappointed when not freely provided with the stuff of her full fantasy, partly from tapping into both Jupiter and the moon's deconic rulership, and is able to have her artistic and fantastical dreams mostly or most often fulfilled, but may squander resources as she expects them to flow continually without stop. She can be a master of illusion in the sense that works of art and music and even acts of romance fully transport the viewer to the world they depict or evoke. But for Venus here, there is no real division between the real or the imaginary, so she always becomes hypnotized by her own pendulum. That gives us 5 bodies in Pisces: the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Neptune, Chiron. Pisces season is in full tilt. Mercury conjoins the fixed star Fomalhaut in Pisces at 2 a.m. on February 20th, as the moon applies to Uranus, which will be pouring a potent poetic elixir into our already enchanted logic over the course of Monday, especially in the evening, and saturates our dream states, so we wake on Tuesday morning right-brained and well-fed with magical language by a star that promotes eminence from seeing the poetical subtlety that connects everything underneath the universe. The supernatural, preternatural, and mystical interplay of nature, spirit, word, and number, the rhyming scheme symmetries, spiraling soliloquies, supernal symphonies, and spectral similes. Think of Terence McKenna's idea about how the universe is composed of language, or the myths of Woden's ecstatic poetry, or Orpheus's hypnotic cantors. This can easily engender magical thinking and speech, the streaming incantations from the Greek magical papyri that break down to Devocus Magicae and barbarous names, elemental torrents of vowels or daemonic lists which forge poetry that alters reality. Despite Mercury's debility in Pisces, there's more than enough activity available for the operative to use at this time. Kill with quill, talk to God, ask an angel, speak the truth, everything I say is a lie, spiral tongues, call a vortex, signal serpents made of saliva, hiss as breath and bend the rules of syntax, lingual lux and larp, holler, herald's harp. Whether you do it with poems, invocations, divination, jargon, or jokes, loose lips sink more than ships when Mercury crosses, the what water flows from Aquarius's urn. A siren song sung amidst the emissions of Frey's first seed, and if you've been considering the implications of panspermia, then this is a whole big ball of wax and watery expansion. Fantastically, Luna arrives again in exaltation on Tuesday around 4 p.m. The moon's monthly visit to Taurus, where the focus is on organic and natural rhythm, healthy pace, and getting what rest, food, stuff, and sustenance and satiation we need. These are precious moments to savor or get channeled into receptacles before Uranus comes and makes the gentle terrain a vibration bed. Maybe you don't like Saturn and the moon aspecting, even when they're trine, but having cold, still Saturn in harmony with Luna's slow grow is better than the squares we'll get when Kronos enters Aquarius in 3 years. For now, there's enough earthy dignity to get on an angle, and you might think of it as the cold darkness a seed needs to germinate. It rots and starves of sunlight before it sprouts. More feminine Saturn mysteries to ponder. Wednesday, February 21st, Venus conjoins Neptune at 2 p.m. So take the above descriptions of Venus in Pisces and Pisces in general and put them on heavy psychedelics. Divinely inspire them. Venus in Pisces to consciousness melting levels. Venus in Pisces hopelessly idealized. Pure Dionysus Bacchanal. Full visitations by the Virgin Mary. Sources say if we heard angels' real voices, we would be obliterated. Some scholars say that angelic hierarchies are really ranks of Olympian deity and planetarily populated. I won't go further into it, but if you've been with me up to this point, you get the idea. This is your moment to manifest spirit into form and experience cascades of hallucinatory love. Obviously, there are upsides and downsides to this configuration, but you can probably figure out how to make the best of it. And this is one of those really wild, nice bests. Meanwhile, Mercury sextiles Saturn at 3 p.m., and poetic free association, right-brained logic and language is willing to work with structural limits, foundations, stratagem, and hierarchy, especially that of nature itself. A good time to write it all down, compose your poetic fantasies, or communicate with nature spirits and elementals. The fact that all this Piscean juice is restricted to the hard and fast laws of nature and time, I think is fantastic. It is the awe you feel of the prehistoric forest when it rears into your presence, or you stumble into it. The trees and stones so huge and so old and so heavy right there in the middle of your revelry, impressing their weight into your consciousness. This is a big perspective, trending ever bigger, but with massive limitations. So it's quite nice that Mars then steps upon the star Ras Al Geti by 10 p.m., inciting the desire to live and act by a moral code and stick up for and defend justice. Justice is something that is done and act rather than an abstraction to hold in mind. On the far end of the Sagittarian bonfire, which glares over the surfaceless Piscean waters, there can be an oversimplification of ideas or an idealistic view of social issues. Sometimes this is necessary, a child's bitter anger at anyone who might knowingly cause animals harm. How could anyone kill a wolf? It's simply unthinkable. On Thursday, February 22nd, the Sun is next to conjoin Fomalhaut at 9 a.m. Charisma and idealistic vision of art, magic, and poetry which inspires us to want to live magically or enact the life of a true artist, or simply to become divinely inspired. See the world as a magic place, and to act out a character in that is in accordance with magical charisma and enchanted virtues. The only thing to be wary of is the hubris of a novice wizard, who has not yet become humbled by weary wisdom. Friday, February 23rd, cognitive language breaks down further as Mercury dives deeper into Pisces and passes into the second decan. An extreme inability to express subtle and profound feelings with words befalls us, and emotions as well as psychic sensitivity drown our speech and logical thinking. There might be times when you should put down the megaphone and pick up a saxophone or equivalent, as music can become your best bet for expressing what you are feeling and thinking, as feeling and thinking here becomes hopelessly blended. Around noon, the moon squares Mercury from Gemini. This may help facilitate Mercury's debility in Pisces to a degree, as current emotions are of a Geminiic flavor: cleverness, trickery, and curiosity, an odd and interesting pairing of mental moods as the intellect is caught doing what emotions should do, and emotions doing what the intellect should do. Venus squares Mars at 6 a.m. on Sunday, which means we will feel the buildup of tension as they apply over the course of Saturday and Saturday night. Free-flowing art and pleasure with no boundaries clash against a struggle to keep the will, mind, body, spirit, and philosophy driving at an ideal target. The conflict is obvious. Do we keep on track or keep having a good time? But there can easily also be a deeper-seated sexual element when Venus and Mars square, experienced acutely as sexual tension, which can be both proactively productive and particularly irritating, as well as the cause of sensual spirals, as in illicit affairs and complete loss of purpose, misdirected energy subverted by the libido. For many, this might be intoxication-based rather than sexualized, getting too drunk to keep momentum going. Another avenue is to imagine the scenes in Duchamp Macabé's W.R. Mysteries of the Organism, which depict wild free love communism compounds. An interesting time in history for us to enact a 70s satire of a 40s to 50s paranoid thinking. What real McCarthyist thought Wilhelm Reich may have been up to in Rangeley, Maine is something similar to what many millennials are up to today, especially on Saturday, February 24th, 2018. Once again, welcome back, Bonnie.
Hello. Today we have very special guest, Ryan Fontaine. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, how's it going?
Ryan is a visual artist and gallerist in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Our third guest from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're cosmically connected.
Can I guess who the other guest
Yeah,
was?
take a guess, yeah.
Was it Marcus one?
Yep.
I thought that might be the case. Actually, I have no other guests. I just thought that would be one of the likely candidates.
Right. We're going to have Marcus on again soon, and then and also Wiley Jack was on.
Oh, right on.
So yeah, to kind of get the listeners acquainted with you, do you want to tell us about your gallery, Hair and Nails?
Yeah, we started this gallery. It's on a property that I also live on, although the commercial space is like separate from the residential space, and it's also the garage has been converted into my studio, so that's kind of like the grounds. We also have a really big backyard that we made into a sculpture garden. We have like 5 pretty large scale sculptures that are pretty permanent, like they're tied into their concrete slabs, and that's what we're doing here. We've been doing this for like a year and a few months, and I don't know, that's about what.
And there's quite a bit of snow there right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of snow, which is kind of nice, but the most defining feature of this winter is the bitter cold. We're kind of coming out of our second polar vortex.
Yeah,
which means like -0, and everyone's a little bit on edge at this point.
Yeah. And we before we hit record, we were talking about that, and of course, other people have experienced the cold winter in different parts of the country, and then you'll get that typically when Saturn goes into Capricorn. It's definitely the deepest winter of the personal planets around the zodiac, and there lots of cold snaps around the country. That was also a signature within one of the eclipse cycles. There was like, I think it was Saros 145. There was the last time was it in like the 80s, or no, in the 2000s I think, and in the 80s there was national cold snaps. They called it like the cold year, or the cold. There was like an event, like you can look it up on Wikipedia, like called the cold month, and I think that really affected Minneapolis as well. I remember seeing it was like Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Yeah,
it's like a horror movie.
Yeah. What show do you have up now?
It's a show of this younger painter named Samuel Weinberg. He kind of makes these although he
Sorry, I think we lost you for a second there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Should I start over with the description of the show?
Yeah.
It's this young, mostly oil painting, but there's a lot of drawings in the show. His name's Samuel Weinberg, and it's kind of like this. He's a painter who technically can kind of do whatever he wants to do, as far as like he can do photorealistic painting, but he chooses to do this kind of like flattened abstract. The subject is this character called the Pink Man, and he used to, like, in the same canvas, make like it'd be like different kind of visual spaces of like photorealism against really flattened, like it's really jarring and kind of surrealist. And this one is like more focused on this the Pink Man as kind of in between abstract and realistic looking, and there's a whole like there's a book release attached to it. There's kind of mythology around this character that he has developed over time.
How long has that show been up for?
It's been up for a couple weeks, and it will be up for a few more.
Yeah, that's really great. That's totally like kind of, I've been wondering a lot. I ask people who are, have curatorial roles, like what's been coming through, and see how well it matches the astro weather. And it's that one's pretty perfect for Aquarius season, which is all about the abstract and like what's like outside the box, what's outside like the concrete, and then being able to connect that back. So you're saying like photorealist and abstract, and kind of like connecting the two worlds. Is anytime someone starts saying abstract over and over, it's very Aquarius, Oh yeah, we're looking at an image of it right now. Yeah, it's awesome. And so that'll be cool to go into the Pisces season too. Like I noticed Venus just went into Pisces, and that's her exaltation, and that's just like a really free-flowing art kind of vibe. It's more like improvised music, like free jazz, expressionist painting, ambient music, like a kind of like interpretive dance kind of art, you know, but people really appreciate art when Venus is in exaltation. And I noticed on social media the day she went into Pisces,
it was Sunday.
Yeah, on the 11th. Yeah. Everyone was just posting about being in a museum or just coming from a gallery the night before and having their mind blown by a performer or by a painter or some artist. It was just so obvious. You're like, okay, Venus is in exaltation. Everyone is just like thinking about art, you know.
A lovely distraction from this cold.
Yeah, from the cold snap.
Horror movie that we've been involved in.
Yeah, which is interesting because Saturn is Capricorn is sextile Pisces by sign, so they're going to be able to collaborate. And I'm been really interested in how that is going to manifest. Like I think I said last week that it's like the Pisces side, you're getting like free flow poetry, and on the Capricorn side, you get like maybe something that's more like the actual book binding. You know, so you see the possibility for the manifestation of this art, like which is very much kind of what you do too. Like you know, like the the art happens in this free space, this inspired state, and then it needs property to be exhibited on, and that takes like stratagem, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Along those lines, I guess, for my partner Kristin Van Loon, who's a choreographer, Marcus like bridged the gap between she's in this duo that she's danced with for like 25 years, Hijack, and they kind of like, their practice is kind of about like harnessing the energy of improvisation, but it's actually mostly choreographed. But they try not to like choreograph out the energy that comes from improvisation, or when you just make something up on the spot, often the most powerful like manifestation of your art. But Marcus totally kind of bridged the gap between them and Wolf Eyes, so that's along the lines of you talking about collaboration. They're trying to put a show together that I guess, I don't know what it would be like, but I think that'd be an interesting performance.
I saw some other Wolf Eyes collaborations.
Were they working with Fluff?
I'm not sure, but I know they were. It's cool, interesting to see people collaborate right now too, because that's definitely in the nodal axis of the eclipses in the Aquarius stuff, like the Leo stuff being like the character, like the person, your charisma, your identity, like the one performer, and then Aquarius being like more like this abstract world, like the decentralized kind of like fringe, you know. So, and then like the tension between the two. But yeah, that's really great. Do you feel like that dynamic is something you think about a lot, like because you also paint, like the free flow of the art process, and then what you have to do as a gallerist?
Definitely. We had already kind of had, before we lived together, we kind of had that. The dialogue mostly was around like how our practices matched up in interesting ways, like the way I approach painting a lot, or especially like right now I'm working on painting for a show that won't happen until May, and I'm trying to figure out, like the logistics of how many pieces I'm going to put in the show, and I'm starting on ones that I know what they're going to be, and it kind of informs what the next ones are going to be, kind of almost like improv in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I allow for like chance things to happen within each object.
That's really perfect for if you're saying it's May, because Uranus goes into Taurus in May, and that's like a big shift from, it's been in Aries in a fire sign for 7 years, and then it goes into Taurus in an earth sign for 7 years, and so it's going to become much more tangible. I've been looking at it in a lot of people's lives, like especially people that are in their like late 20s, early 30s. A lot of them are having they're having like, they're gonna like suddenly get like a Uranus aspect, and so right when that happens, and so like it's really interesting that like the advice for that is like Uranus wants to like revolutionize and innovate and just like create this like independence, discovery, experimental kind of a epiphany thing going on, all this energy. It's like the Tower card in tarot, and if you're not wanting to experiment or leave things experimental and be able to like, here are the pieces and then I'm just going to improvise with them, then it's just going to create chaos and scatter your pieces everywhere. And so like it really is like a lot of people have this thing in May, this target, you know, that like it's already manifesting because it's like Uranus going into an earth sign. I thought like no one would experience it until it actually switched signs. But I've been thinking about it because I've been reading for so many people, and they're like, oh, well, that's crazy because I have this thing in May. And like, oh yeah, well, I think because it's an earth sign, it's like you see it already taking shape, you know, in the future. And so,
already putting out
or maybe
roots.
maybe if you're like making these objects, you know, like, or making music or whatever it is, you're kind of attuned to the change. Could that perhaps be true?
yeah. I
Like
think
beforehand, you know when it's going to be displayed, so you're working on a different kind of time frame so that it like matches up in May.
Yeah,
But you wouldn't just be making it in May.
Totally. I think that's true for how easy it's going to go for people, like people who are like their practice has improvisation built in on the fly, and they like that, you know. But there are a lot of people that are like, well, I'm going, you know, that's right when we're gonna sell our house, or, you know, and you're like,
Sign these papers.
yeah, or like when it's there's not as much wiggle room, and like, you know, like when you sell a property and things like that, there are these sudden, you're like, oh, I didn't think of that, you know, but it's experienced more as like a chaos, you know, or like a turbulence.
Yeah.
But yeah, been telling everyone just to get experimental. And Bonnie, you had something that was reminding us of that transition in May, right? I think it was like that design group in China.
Oh, PH5.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a duo. It's Wei Lin is at the helm, and it's her family's knitwear factory, and she is an Ironman competitor, but she started this incredible business and knitwear company that is absolutely changing the face of, or the perception really, of what it means for something to be made in China. And I've noticed that being a theme a lot lately, because though China has the ability to make things fast and cheap, they also, of course, know how to make everything in beautiful ways too. And so I love this idea of the changing face of China. Also, for this PH5, she just had a show. There's two of them, but they had a show, and they included non-models in the show, so strong women that they felt represented their clothes well. And of course, that's been a theme lately. A lot of women feeling empowered and doing great things.
Yeah.
In a much more public way, because of course, like, that's been happening forever. But you know, in a much there's a spotlight put on it. There's more room, or more interest in covering that.
Yeah, and I just thought that was going to be so fitting for Uranus into Taurus, which, you know, people are saying like, oh, well, you know, it's Uranus and Taurus, you get earthquakes, you know, it shakes the ground, it shakes the earth, you get the bull market starts bucking around, you know, you get like materials and money start getting kind of like ups and downs. But it's also a Venusian ruled sign, so you're going to get that innovation, experimentation, discovery, revolution of Uranus with Venusian signatures. So you're going to get art signatures and craft signatures, and a lot of them are going to be female based. And Uranus is also technology too. So just this kind of like, and didn't you say, like, wasn't there some component of it that was like women that code?
Yeah, Adriana Chavez and Danielle Mullen are two women who are in Girls Who Code.
Yeah, Girls Who Code. Yeah, so it's so, you know, that's already happening, but things like that I can see like really are maybe headed towards this target directory, like what, you know, when Uranus actually ingresses. Like you're saying, Ryan, there's like people can see it. They're already forming it, you know.
Yeah, another thing we're doing is also our first fashion show, which you might be interested in, Bonnie.
Absolutely.
Kind of. Do you guys know Rachel Blomgren, who lives in LA now?
Yeah.
That's from here.
Through
and is in the
remotely.
band Olga, and she's going to use like a textile that I guess we're going to start making. We made the screen, and we're going to make the textile tomorrow. It's based on like a kind of pattern of this hair pattern of this type of painting that I've made in the past. And then she's going to use, like, I don't know, we have like 40 yards of some canvas, some silk, and some vinyl. And she's going to make some clothing, and then we're going to have this event in July that's going to involve like kind of a combination between 3 different choreographer groups or individuals and like a typical like runway fashion show in the gallery that will go into our backyard sculpture area. So that's another collaboration that is happening that's like kind of a new thing for us.
I love that. That sounds incredible.
That's really interesting because that is July is when the next Aquarius eclipse occurs, and today there's one occurring today. So there's the solar eclipse in Aquarius today, and then in July we get a lunar eclipse in Aquarius on the 27th. So it's interesting. That collaborative energy seems to be like tied into this eclipse cycle, and then just like really rooting, and that's going to be a heavy day. Is it towards the 27th, kind of end of July?
We haven't. It could be. We haven't really set the date yet. We just know it's going to be in July. It seems to be where everything's aligning to happen then. It's a lot of people's schedules, and just trying to figure out what will work for a lot of different collaborators. It's different than if you're just on your own and working with your own schedule.
Yeah, totally. So what have you been working on yourself lately, like for art?
So I'm going to, for this May show, which will still be up, it'll be like the backdrop, and I'm thinking of that as the backdrop for this fashion show event. I'm making these a specific size, 15 of a specific size canvas. They're going to be all very different. Some are more like assemblage. Some are going to be straight kind of traditional oil paintings. And I'm going to do 15 of, they're going to be 42 by 66. And that will fill most of the gallery, except there'll be 3 pieces that are going to be like these squares that involve a video component near the center. And the video component might just feel like it's integrated into the rest of the composition. Like, for instance, it's really abstract, just like colors like shifting slowly. And something I just have wanted to experiment with, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, but that's what I'm working on right now. I'm doing these process kind of oriented paintings that involve, like, one was drawing on that size of surface, like 66 by 42, like drawing a single line in graphite that kind of wound around and connected back to itself after covering the whole surface. So that was like, like a ridiculous amount of time.
Yeah.
Finished that one, and now I'm doing these really thin red cadmium lines on yellow cadmium surface, and that's like proving to be even more tedious. I'm getting close. I have like 7 inches to go going sideways.
That's great. That sounds. That all sounds so like Saturn and Capricorn to like the Venus and Pisces kind of sextile. Like we're like one way of looking at it, like I said, is like the book of the actual poetry, and then the book that the poetry's in. But then you get like the art process, but then you get like measurement and like long periods of time, and like really having to like buckle down and work through it, and
yeah, it's like there's no way around it really. It's like you just have to do it. It's like I kind of, they're just like vertical lines. So if you could picture, you're just going from left to right, and it kind of it reads in this way because I'm doing a freehand line that is like over the course of like the 60 hours I'm into it, my line has gotten like way better. You know what I mean? So it's like you can read this like learning process through the surface, and I don't know. I go about like, it's about like an inch of canvas surface for like an hour, so it's something like that.
Yeah, that's like a major signature to the Saturn and Capricorn time is just like if you do something for a long time, or if you do something repeatedly, or do something every day, you're going to be really good at it.
The moon going into Taurus.
Yeah, I'm feeling that.
The moon going into Taurus is definitely going to help that.
Yeah, there'll be like every time the moon's in Taurus, you'll get like that organic pace and like that feeling like in the rhythm of things, and that's always a good time. And then it's worth savoring that or making talismans of that energy before Uranus goes into Taurus, because this is like this period that we're going to get the pure moon in Taurus for and then once Uranus goes in, it's 7 years of Taurus being more bumpy and chaotic than it had been for 84 years before. So like it's really interesting how that's just going to affect the moon itself, affect the moon's exaltation, and affect like the feeling of organic pace, kind of like the way we pace ourselves for the next 7 years starting in May is going to be a little bit more kind of like on the, having to like do an obstacle course while you're in your organic rhythm, or like do your organic rhythm with like the world shaking around you.
Well, it will just take a moment to adjust to that new pattern.
Yeah.
Or maybe not a moment, maybe a little longer, but you will eventually adjust. It's not a scary thing.
And I think like what Ryan's saying is like adjusting to being open to improvisation.
Absolutely.
It's also like I find it really grounding to do these like long process. Occasionally I'll take on something like that textile I was talking about was this tiny brushstroke of a hair that I just repeated it over the course of an entire surface, but it's like this anchor in the midst of like all these other things in life that are a little chaotic. And sometimes I'm making a painting that I don't really know what it's going to be, and you're just like go through this like kind of roller coaster of defeat and triumph on like an hourly basis, kind of.
Totally.
Like you're like, that really sucks.
Yeah.
I totally destroyed it. And then you do something else and you're like, oh my God, that's sweet. I can't even believe it. I pulled triumph from the jaws of defeat, or it's just like this like chaotic like roller coaster. But with these patterns, it's kind of like, I know what I'm going to do today. And it's not, there's no roller coaster. I'm just going to be making this line. So that's kind of like, gives me time to think about the other things I'm going to do that are a little bit undetermined right now.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that last week with Maralie was our guest, and she was talking about like time and the art process, and she was talking about just spending a long time organizing and cleaning out her studio and just deciding what projects to kind of put aside, and just with this like Saturn and Capricorn perspective of like long games and the long time, that you kind of can say like, okay, I can open up this area to think, and in time this project's still going to be there, it's still on the timeline somewhere. We don't have to rush right now, I guess.
Even if you want to, you sometimes can't with your projects. Like if you're trying to get people to pay attention to what you're doing, for instance, you can't. There's nothing you can do stuff towards that end, but it's like you have to be thinking of like the long game, like you said. Yeah,
if you shoot off a lot of flares and like starter pistols, people
might just bug out of it.
They'll get annoyed and just leave.
It's not, you can't. No matter how much you want to keep bugging people, it's probably not the best strategy.
Right. Yeah. I think I've learned that one the hard way.
I still keep learning that one the hard way. So I make myself resist sending out another email or something.
That's become my own, that's my that's basically my karmic yoke, you were talking about assemblage, and we were looking at the Calvin Klein show that was just like the Calvin Klein experience at the American Stock Exchange building. People were saying it was like a melting pot of like every influence ever from every era, especially in all the historical references that the designer, which was what's his last name, Simmons, that had ever attempted. And that was just a small detail, but that was something that I thought was very Piscean. Now that we start seeing things like mixing, and everything's Pisces has no boundaries and everything flows together. That's like going to become. I was looking at that through history, because you get Venus in Pisces every year. You get Pisces season about every year. It's like on a lag with the sun, but then you get Pisces season every year, like clockwork, and then was looking at people in history who have the signatures, like especially of the star Fomalhaut, which gives Pisces a lot of its nature, that like being able to see the magic and poetics underneath everything and how they're all connected. And at one end you get like imagination and fantasy. At the other end you get like schizophrenia, hallucination, paranoia, and like escapism, you know. So Mercury on Fomalhaut, which Mercury's in detriment in Pisces because all reading, logic, all like numbers, math, like linguistics and like maps, all that stuff just looks really blended. So it's great for poetry, but bad for, if you're having to actually like do your taxes or something. Someone who has Mercury there is James Joyce, which was like
such a good example.
Perfect,
yeah. Once you said that, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I get it.
Because Bonnie was asking me about Mercury and on Fomalhaut today, and I went into this long, annoying explanation, and then I was like, well, James Joyce has that, and you're like, okay, I get it. Then the Sun on Fomalhaut was a crazy list. I saw it was like, among others, Anais Nin, Nina Simone, Kurt Cobain, Robert Altman, George Harrison, Patty Hearst, Johnny Cash, Andre Breton. So it just seemed like that's one that you're just always going to get people that are, creative, prominently creative when the Sun's there. They have a creative vision. And then Venus will conjunct Neptune soon too, and that has a huge, Neptune is very like cinema. And so you get actors and directors and filmmakers. And I didn't even bother listing them. I looked up like people with Venus conjunct Neptune, and there was just an enormous list of actors and filmmakers. It was, so it's cool what you're saying about this thing you're working on with like assemblage and then involving video. It's like it'll work right now very well.
Well, I hope so. It's kind of like uncharted territory a little bit. I could see it being like ineffective or a bad combination of a couple of mediums. Like I could see so many ways it could go wrong, but I kind of have a vision where it's like the video won't overwhelm the rest of the construction. Hopefully it'll just be integrated, but we'll see.
Yeah. You seem pretty level-headed about the whole thing, which is always helpful.
I have a vision of it that I think will work, but I gotta make it actually. And then trying to figure out, the logistical things like what kind of monitor to use and so on. And the cord, of course.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
So
that's like the perfect combination of what we're saying is that like Neptune and Pisces, sextile, Saturn and Capricorn, and then we looked like when that's going to be acute, when that's going to be the tightest sextile, and it's actually next year around this time. I think it starts like right around January 23rd, 2019. So if those are mediums that you get really into and you want to keep working that way, it's just going to be like an increasing ability to like hold the construction within the assemblage,
I like the idea of continuing these kind of collaborations between like other disciplines. Like, we have a visual art gallery, or that's like the focus of it. We don't do too many other events besides like artist conversations or, things like that. We definitely have an opening party, but we don't do a lot of like performance or parties outside of that. But I'd like to like kind of tie us in with the other disciplines of like fashion interests me, especially like the wild, more like almost like sculptural types, threads of fashion making, kind of like Ray Kawakubo or something like that has been a big influence on me, but I know a lot of people in the last year, or more than the last year, but also like tying into the dance world that Kristin is like, part of is important to us because it, I don't know, gives it, kind of makes the space lively if all these things are kind of swirling around this particular like geographic location.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, I've definitely been thinking of it exactly the same thing, of wanting to like combine the stuff we do with like magical practice and client work and doing readings for people, whether it's like geomancy or tarot or astrology, but making it having there be like a musical element, having there be like a kind of like an element of like it's like a feast,
food element,
like it's like, or it's like an event where all those things are going on. There's like a sculptural, visual performance, but not having it be like will do all those things, you know, but having that, it just gives you an opportunity to actually really pull in different communities or pull in your own community and like make these like kind of cultural synthesizations, you know.
Yeah, and you know that other people can do it better than you can. So so involve them, and it makes it less. It definitely makes it more interesting.
I think a couple of years ago we tried something like that. We were like, well, we'll just do it all, you know. And then those projects didn't go very far, you know.
Just stressful.
Yeah, because you like divide all your energies. It's good. It's important, I think, to do really like solid work is to really focus on it. And if you just spread yourself too thin between too many different focuses, it's never as good as like collaborating with people who are all focused on a specific thing. I think that's a better way to go.
Oh, yeah,
totally.
But kind of hard to cultivate that in itself. That's kind of like that art in itself in a way.
Yeah, and it just takes like that whole Venus will help. I mean, that's like the social component of art, you know, and anything like in any Libra stuff will help. You know, just bring that. It's like that arts culture. What do you see as like trends right now in art?
Well, I mean, the most overwhelming trend is a kind of a focus on like identity-based art or political art,
right? Yeah,
in some way, and that's like what is generally being like funded or put in at least the local institutions. So that seems to be clearly the moment, the zeitgeist of this time, you know?
Yeah,
definitely.
Which seems in relation to like what's going on with our politics, you know, a reaction to that.
Yeah, I tried to talk to a guest about that a couple of weeks ago, and that's very much like the Saturn, the eclipse cycle, like the North Node in Leo and the South Node in Aquarius, where like it's draining Aquarius energy and like increasing Leo energy. So it's like draining the like the abstract kind of like avant-garde fringe, just like people doing like avant-garde ideas and putting it all into like the your personal identity idea, or like. So that's
interesting that you put it that way, because that's like what feels like happening. There's like a show that we're gonna present in October, and it's three women who are abstract painters, like pretty much pure abstract, but we find it like their work really like kind of innovative within that, you know, in that like specific thread of art making. And we were talking about that. We all met together for the first time to just kind of talk about the show. And you know, you kind of just have to stick to what is your particular voice. You know, you can't chase what the moment is. You have to keep with, if you're an abstract painter, keep doing your own work, regardless of what the art world in a larger sense is like focused on.
Yeah, for sure.
It'll never feel authentic if you're just, well, I got to figure out now my identity that I can project or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's not what you're doing.
Yeah, and that eclipse cycle, you know, we're 9 months into it, so it's just going to be about another 9 months of that activity, and then it's going to switch to a different pair of signs, and then we'll hit a whole new set of themes, and we'll get to check out what that's all about. But when it does drain stuff away, it purges it. It drains it away so that like it can like release all the poison in that area so it can fill back up again. It's not like it takes it away permanently. It just is kind of like, let's empty out this cup so that it can be refilled ultimately, you know, and then it kind of it overfills the other one so that when it makes its way back around to it, there's stuff to pour off, you know.
Yeah, it feels like art history is almost like a series of those cycles, like over and over again.
Yeah, I would actually love to do. I'm pretty fascinated with the eclipse cycles above everything else. I would love to do an art history kind of examination of thematic cycles.
Maybe it could be a collaboration between you and Ryan.
Yeah, sure. We're trying to like we're gonna switch to like a once a month show within the next couple weeks, and then have like additional content of like collaborations with people who are guests or could be guests, and kind of combine ideas and give like 35-45 minute presentations of things like that are just for subscribers. So if you're interested
go ahead. How often do you do it right now?
It's once a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work. We're going to change our format and try to get more varied coming up soon. So
it's evolution.
Yeah, evolution. Yeah, and like I'm always looking at history that way too, and I'd love to look more at art specifically. I was looking at this current kind of bunch of aspects from a historical perspective, and looking at last time. You know, Neptune has been in Pisces for 7 years. It came in right. The first hit was April 4th, 2011. Then it came in February 3rd, 2012 for good, and then it's in the sign for about 14 years. I felt like you could really feel that shift in 2011, 2012 of that like spiritualization suddenly. Like the last time Neptune was Pisces, last week we were talking about like spiritism in America and
Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah, Rudolf Steiner. And so this time we're at the point now where like almost everyone does yoga and almost everyone does herbal medicine, but right in like and then that whole like,
or they've heard of it at least.
Or they've heard of it, yeah, or they know they should do it, you know, like, but right in 2011, 2012 is like, of course, everyone is talking about like, oh, 2012, you know, and then a lot of people were like, maybe 2012 really did happen, you know, like some people had experiences that like, things did dissolve and then come back together in a way, and that's very Neptunian. I was looking at the last time Neptune was in there, and Neptune and Venus came together, and it was March 30th, 1861, like the last set before this Neptune Pisces period, and it had been in there for about 14 years. It was the end of that cycle, and on that day, Sam Houston, the governor of Texas, refuses to take the Confederate oath, which is one of the main things that leads up to the war breaking out in the Civil War. And he literally says, like, basically, like, he refuses to take the oath 3 times, and he's like,
this isn't real.
Yeah, he basically just says the government's not null and void, the government's not real, and so I just resign from my position because it doesn't even technically exist. If like, and so that's so similar to now too, you know, that and that the Civil War had a lot to do with Uranus and Gemini, and so we're headed to that. We're headed to like that same combo of Neptune and Taurus and Uranus and Gemini within about 7 years. But for now, we get to concentrate on material innovation, which is, I guess, is what they concentrated on as well, and that was one of the factors. That was the rise of industrialization. That
we were just watching a video about a factory. There's 2 different factories, but one factory is making leather from collagen, and then another factory was making fiber from yeast and sugar that would be similar to spider silk.
Yeah, and so I think that's what last time we got industrialization, and then this time we're getting that. That's going to be, it's the end of the epoch Uranus Taurus, not the beginning of the epoch Uranus Taurus, you know. So, new materials.
It feels like there's a lot of innovation along those lines happening, or in other technologies at the same time that at least the federal politicians are trying to take us back and backwards.
Oh yeah.
As far back as they can go. It's a weird conflict I think it feels that way to a lot of people, just like very schizophrenic time and.
Yeah, and I think it's just part of the mirroring effect. It's kind of like the last kind of roll in the grave before
the throes of death.
Yeah, you hope.
Yeah.
That seems like that's like the best case scenario.
Yeah.
But then there's the worst case scenario where they're successful, which, you know, you hope that's not what's happening. Doesn't feel like it is, but, you know, it does feel like a really dangerous time.
Yeah.
Even though unlikely, and it doesn't feel like it's the majority's wishes for it to return to something really horrible in every way. Not like it. It's just like I guess it just makes it more. It's making everything more obvious what it is like we don't want.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So within that clarity of knowing what you don't want at all, maybe you had ideas of that before, but to see it actually an attempt to make it the reality for everyone. You know what you don't want, but now you value more how you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe
totally. I think that's definitely what's going on. The astrology reads like we're shifting away from those forms, but that you get these like beginning and end events that they kind of mirror each other, because Jupiter and Saturn come together every 20 years in a pair of signs, and every 200 years they're in an element, and you can really read history this way. We've talked about this on the show a bunch, but it's very important right now because it's happening. We're about to shift again in 2020, and so we're shifting from a 200-year Earth epoch that the entire industrial era was into an air epoch, you know. So you get if you look at them before historically, you'll get like the themes from the beginning coming back again at the end to kind of close out and say like, okay, yeah, like this is what happened. It's like a recap, and then it's like, and we've talked about it is almost like Judgment Day in this way, because it's like, look at all the horrible stuff we did. Let's judge it, and like let's decide not to do that anymore.
Once and for all. Yeah.
So hopefully that's where we're at. Well, we're running out of time here. Do you want to tell people about where they can find you? And
yeah, sure. We have there's a Instagram account that's at Hair and Nails Minneapolis, I believe. That's actually Kristin's Instagram, and she mostly posts about the gallery. And then my Instagram is Oval Headley, Oval space or underscore Headley. And then we have a website, hairandnailsart.com. So you can find information about what we're doing or contact us through in those ways.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks very much for being on this show, and we'll definitely love to talk to you again and try to figure out collaborations we can do.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you for listening to Liminal Light. Our theme music was composed by the ever-talented Asa Irons. Our guest was Ryan Fontaine, visual artist and gallerist, who co-runs the Hair and Nails Gallery in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Find them at hairandnailsart.com. Today's background sound was by Valise, the creative pseudonym of Maralie. Explore her work at Maralie.com. I'm your host, Chrissy Puccieri Rapucci, and you can find me at atavisceral.com, ATAVISCERAL.com, where I post articles and forecasts, offer chart readings, talismanic concoctions, occult services, tarot, divination, and more.